You're listening to Platform Six Cantina, a Star Wars The Old Republic podcast. We're glad you could join us.
Welcome to the Platform Six Cantina Podcast. I am Bodie.
And I am Mara. And this is Proclamation II, SWTOR Update 7.3, Consequences.
Consequences, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what that could refer to. Huh.
Well, before we get into that, we're actually going to start somewhere else, because I know you have a question for me, Bodie, about 7.3 and what we're hoping to see.
Yes. So this proclamation is the second part of Proclamation I, Prognostications. So we're going to be talking now about things that we're looking forward to in the update 7.3, and also things that are we hope get interwoven into the story proceeding onwards from this part. And I think that's a good way to summarize that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so to kick things off, what do you, Mara, want to see in 7.3 with the update for Arcann specifically, since he's the featured character that the developers have made a big point to showcase that he's back?
So for him specifically, I hope we talked about in the previous proclamation that he's featured very centrally in the teaser picture that we saw in the live stream. I hope that indicates that he's also featured centrally in the upcoming story.
He's gotta be.
He's gotta be.
I know,
we
right?
Believe it.
We believe.
I hope that Arcann's journey to the unnamed dark planet will have resulted in him proving himself very capable and proving himself to be an asset to the Alliance. I hope to see a continuation in his character arc, going from his feeling of having failed because he was not able to push through this force energy and find his way into the ruins. I hope to see him going from that to feeling that he has succeeded. And I hope to see something from him that gives us a sense that he has come to terms with the fact that asking for help, asking for Sana Ray's support and the commander's support is a show of strength and not a show of weakness and not a sign of having failed.
Great point.
I feel like that's a massive step for him in his character development. And I hope to see that further develop. I hope to see Sana Ray becoming maybe a friend to him, maybe something of a mentor figure. I hope to see him being at peace with these new connections to other people. And I hope to see that playing into the romance, where I hope to see him perhaps be more confident with less of an emphasis on the past and having hurt each other in the past and carrying guilt about the past, and even more of a focus on moving forward.
And what a burden that is to be carrying around all the time.
And I don't mean to indicate that I feel like that has defined the romance so far. I feel like it was a big deal in the beginning, as it very much should be. And actually, I wish that there had been more time to explore that part of the relationship. I'm all about the slow burn in romance.
Yes.
So I do wish we'd had even more of that, and maybe a longer romance arc, I suppose. But going by what we do have, the little bits that we have gotten also in his letters, I do already have a sense that he is beginning to move past that, and the romance, the relationship is beginning to move past that into being more hopeful about the future. He does say that in one of his recent letters, that he feels hope for the future. And I hope to see more of that kind of development, him feeling at peace with himself, having carved out a place for himself in the Alliance, and eventually, in the galaxy, and finding something that is also just for him and not always about the commander and not always about the relationship, but something that is just his contributions and his hopes for the future and his role in the Alliance
as an individual
as an individual, independently of our character, and seeing that carry over into the romance as a sense of confidence and being at peace with himself.
See, that's perfection. The only way that I could possibly even contribute more to that wish list, I guess you could say, for the character of Arcann, is to, I'm not even sure that they can even do this in just one story update, but to continue the theme for me, that it's a constant struggle for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That this part of him is always going to be there. The part of him that,
Mm-hmm.
the part of him that is still reeling from the damage inflicted by years of abuse by Valkorion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love that part of him. It's
I do
that
too.
that dark struggle within, and that's a big part of what makes the character, I'd say relatable, but I'm not saying that I have dark, like those kind of feelings within too. But I mean, it's an everyday thing for us, right? We're
It
constantly
is.
struggling with our emotions, our reactions to
Absolutely.
certain circumstances or situations.
Mm-hmm.
It's a back and forth. And
Yeah.
I feel like the character of Arcann would be severely diminished if he was just completely washed clean of all these issues that he's been dealing with for years.
Mm-hmm.
This part of him is part of him, and what also makes the character very interesting and also
Absolutely.
dangerous.
Absolutely. It's what gives him his depth. And I think it's absolutely fair to call it relatable. This is a character who's very much larger than life. And it's also a fantastical universe, obviously. So when we talk about things being relatable, I think everybody knows that we're not talking about a one-to-one comparison with real life.
Right.
But I do feel like Arcann is a great character because he does mirror that inner struggle, that is it's something that anybody could relate to and anybody could understand. I think even if you don't carry trauma exactly of your own, everybody can relate to that feeling of the past returning in the present and continually being something that you have to deal with. Because even if what you've experienced in your life is not something that you would describe as a trauma, everybody carries something with them, right? The past is always with us.
And redemption, I mean, what a redemption story. I mean, it's probably one of the ultimate ones that's even out there. And at the end of the day, these redemption arcs matter to us because of what they represent, which is hope.
Yeah.
We've all done things that we regret, though hopefully not anything like what Arkann's done. But
hopefully not quite on that scale, but still.
But redemption arcs do remind us, all of us, that there's always a chance for forgiveness. And if we always work hard and genuinely grow into better people, we not only can possibly heal ourselves through that process, but also our connection to others. And in the case of like Arcann, a character that's undergone like a pretty moving and impactful redemption arc, in my opinion, and I know you agree too. His journey from light to dark, I say light to dark first, notice that, and then back to light again, can serve as a shining example, not only to us in our lives, but to other characters in the story itself, that no hurdles are insurmountable, that you truly can pull yourself up out of the darkness back into the theoretical light. So there's just, it's such a great story, and we just hope to see way more of that development for him, and not for it to be one and done, like you're cleansed, we're back on boss, you're cleansed, bye. This is
absolutely,
we need to see that balance. We need to see that him struggling still, at least in my opinion.
And everything you just said, Bodie, I think is also just central to what a Star Wars story is supposed to be about. These are the key themes of Star Wars, the idea that you can always come back, that you can always find your way back to the light and to your true self. That's what Vader's redemption arc is about too. And you talked about balance, which I think is another central theme to Star Wars. And that's exactly what I want to see too. I don't want to see Arcann becoming a good person. I want to see him becoming a whole person. That's the journey I want to see for him. It's a journey towards being whole, not towards being washed clean of his darkness. I completely agree with you. That would actually diminish his character. I feel like he always needs to carry that duality with him. It's the core of the character to me. But I would like to see him find some kind of peace and balance in living with that kind of duality.
Yeah. such a great character. It's obviously how we met and what we've bonded over, but it's just so moving. I absolutely adore his story, and I can't believe we're getting more in 7-3. I'm just beyond stoked about it.
We're so excited.
I do have one more thing, two more things I want to tell you. One is a pipe dream that's probably never going to happen, but if it happens, I'll just start screaming. The first one that I'm hoping has a good chance of happening in 7-3 for Arcann would be a scene with Sana Ray, or a scene where she's in it with him, because they haven't actually spoken, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. That's a very good point.
So it doesn't have to be like long, but just to show that they're talking. You know how the scene with well, I'm just ruining my last ultimate pipe dream by saying this, but do you remember the moment with Lana on the bridge of the ship with Nostoral?
Yes.
Something like that. But Arcann with Sana Ray, just something brief. That'd be wonderful to me.
I would love to see that too, because I do feel like the relationships that Arcann has formed to other people than the commander are very much behind the scenes. We barely see him having any direct conversations with Senya. I think there is one scene in the entire game where Senya actually speaks to him directly.
That's
crazy.
We
see them together, and we see them touching each other in an affectionate way. We see Senya putting her hand on his shoulder just before the Battle of Edessa, actually. But we don't really see them actually speaking about anything. So I think it's implied that Arcann has formed relationships to other people, obviously Senya, but also Sana Ray. But I would also love to see that explode.
And here's my pipe dream. I already ruined it. There's no surprise, but it will probably never happen. But I would love, on the Republic side, to see a scene where Nostoral is talking to Arcann. Can you imagine any better story to document in Nostoral's journals than Arcann's journey? Can you imagine?
I think Nostoral would be incredibly interested in talking to him. And we know that Nostoral is the historian, he's the chronicler of the Old Republic. So I think he would be, first of all, I think he would be incredibly interested in just learning about Soule and how people connect with the Force on Soule. But I also agree with you completely that he would be interested in Arcann as an individual and in his personal journey.
I mean, I would love that. That's not going to happen in 7-3.
That's not
the chances are very small, but that's my pipe dream. That's my dream.
And if the devs don't give it to us, we can fill that gap on our own, the way that we've done with other gaps in the story for other things that we would love to see that have not been possible for whatever reason to put in the actual game.
Exactly. With that, is there anything else you wanted to add to Arcann for 7-3?
No, I think that's it. I want to see him becoming his own person, a person who is at peace with his duality, and I want to see his relationships with other characters develop going forwards. That's it.
I agree. I guess at this point, we're going to move forward here. We're going to be talking about 7-3 and beyond. And maybe some things that 7-3 could start laying foundations for. And I think I'll go first, if that's cool with you.
Please do,
Mara. So this might be an interesting take, I guess you could say. But the main thing that I personally want to see for the story moving forward, and this is just generally speaking, and then we'll dive into the specifics, but is that I want to see consequences for our characters' actions. So that right there, I want to see something happen to saboteurs, people that play the story as saboteurs. I want there to be actual tangible things that happen in the game for our characters for making those decisions over, at this point, a pretty long period of time, right? This goes back to like what, Osis days? Is that as far back as it goes?
Yeah, I think it does, actually. So that's a long time. That's also several years that our characters actually been a saboteur. I have not really, my main characters are not saboteurs, so there might be things I've forgotten, but I don't remember a lot of saboteur choices or consequences in the recent updates.
There's been no consequence yet because, again, spoiler alert, I mean, but there's nothing that's actually happened where anyone's come out and found out about what we've been doing. It just keeps proceeding on, which is great. At least they haven't forgotten about the fact. But at a certain point, because this game is the way it is, and your decisions in the past have had dire consequences for the fate of other characters, correct? Like we're talking death, and banishment and beyond. There comes a point where you kind of want to see actual consequences come to fruition for our characters specifically.
Yeah.
So full disclosure, Mara knows this about me, but I am all about playing dark-sided Republic characters and light-sided Imperial players. So I'm talking, some of the things they do on the Republic side are pretty dark. So a lot of them are saboteurs. So I want some things to happen in that regard. And as it pertains to 7.3 and the fact that Arcann is in the story again in 7.3, which is huge in itself, along the same lines, I do want consequences to come into play as it pertains to Arcann and Senya. And what I mean by that is, if you have a character that you're headcanon, you're actually playing through the story with a specific story in mind for your character. Like, for example, my dark side smuggler. I've literally been playing the entire storyline on her as someone who's striving to become the biggest crime boss in the entire galaxy. Where the end goal...
smuggler is awful. Bodie's smuggler is the worst person you could possibly be.
She's been making she'll do anything to try to get ahead, take over like cartel assets, anything across the board. But so if you continue the story that way, if you have a headcanon in mind, you play your character that way. For my character specifically, when she encounters Arcann, the Eternal Emperor, and you have the chance to keep him alive or kill him, for her, she wants to keep him alive, right? Because he's a huge asset. This is someone who's been basically had the entire galaxy in his grasp for years. Complete domination of everything and everyone, right?
And this is what the dark side smuggler does, right?
Yeah.
He or she collects people who are assets in order to form, a cartel, basically, or a found family, depending on how you headcanon it and how you play your smuggler. But the smuggler is very much somebody who hoards not just wealth, but also people.
Right. So it makes sense that for her, she wants to keep someone. I mean, imagine having the Eternal Emperor or former Eternal Emperor as part of your crew. I mean, imagine the knowledge he'd have. I mean, if you're trying to like take over trading routes in your headcanon, you know what I mean? You'd keep him alive. So Absolutely. That being said, during that one pivotal scene where you take the throne back with Senya and Arcann by your side, you can't tell me that Arcann and Senya are going to be totally cool with my character literally sitting on the throne and saying, Zakul, you belong to me now. There's no way.
Considering that character's past and that character's choices and attitude and way of mistreating her people, because let's be honest, your character is also pretty toxic.
Terrible. Terrible, especially to Corso.
Yeah, I mean, there is a weird... It does play out weirdly if you have that kind of character and you take the throne. It doesn't seem right that they would support that choice. Senya is somebody who was prepared to take down her own son because she could not morally, approve or stand the way that he was ruling the galaxy. So why on earth would she support a stranger?
Yeah, that's the thing too. For Senya herself, like she's not even Arcann's freshly, this is in quotes, freshly redeemed, whatever you want to say about that. But Senya's been herself the whole time. You think she's just going to be cool with that? Especially considering the horrible things, the horrendous things you can say to Arcann in that scene. It's awful. It's just awful things you can say.
It's a really good point that Senya has a very coherent, well-established set of morals and beliefs. I feel she very much knows who she is. So there's no way that she would stand for this. And like you said with Arcann, you could argue that, well, at this point in the story, he doesn't perhaps quite know himself. He has not had time to really settle into his new identity. So perhaps he would more easily go along with what a dark side player character chose to do. But for Senya, it comes across as very strange.
Yeah. And even subsequent actions beyond that, just the whole throne scene is just bad in itself with, you can say terrible things, but just going beyond that, if your character continues to make terrible, awful decisions that impact the lives of other people in very bad ways, Osis, Onderon, Meksha, beyond, you just don't see how a redeemed Arcann and Senya would stick around in the alliance at that point. And because we do feel that the characters at that point, they have been redeemed. Arcann is light side Arcann, the way we'll talk about that in another episode too, but it's not like he can just, you think he can actually just be ignorant as to what the character's doing? I don't think so.
I feel like maybe he could be blinded to some degree, either by love, if you play the story in a way where, you romance him and he is in love with the character, or blinded by guilt and self-loathing and shame, perhaps, over his past, but only to a certain point, right? There comes a point where your character does things that are just so dark and so obviously evil and twisted that even if he is in love with her, even if he hates himself for what he's done to this person, there comes a point where it doesn't feel right that he could be blind to that.
So that's where the whole idea of consequences comes up, which is a big part of the story going forward. For me, I'm hoping that there are going to be consequences for this. And in my opinion, see what you think about this. For characters like my dark side smuggler, for example, I'm hoping the consequences would be that there would eventually be a scene, something like a catalyst of some sort, where it would spur Arcann and Senya on to actually leave the alliance in some fashion. And it would be a permanent thing. I mean, it needs to have consequences. We're doing the characters a disservice by having them sit here blindly next to this terrible character I've created. Terrible. Which I think a redeemed Arcann and Senya, they just have nothing in common. I mean, we have the same kind of ideas already in place when we talk about Quinn and Dorn on IOCATH, how they refuse to join unless you were aligned with a certain way or made a certain decision on IOCATH. I think that we're doing the characters of Arcann and Senya a disservice in a way.
I agree completely.
Keeping them around.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that is exactly what gives a character integrity, and it's also what makes them come across as a believable person, somebody whose story you can be immersed in and believe in. When they have their own opinions and when there are consequences for your actions. I also liked it when Admiral Ago puts his foot down. if you join the Empire and says, okay, well, I can no longer support you because that just goes against everything that I believe in.
Yeah.
And I agree completely that if you romance Arcann with a very dark side character and you consistently make these evil choices, because let's just call them that, because that's what they are. A lot of the time, your dark side choices are just sadistic. Sometimes you can make a dark side choice that is pragmatic, but a lot of the time they come across as simply being sadistic. And it's hard to develop any kind of headcanon where Arcann would be blind to that or where he would be okay with that. And that means that it plays out in a way where it feels like he doesn't truly know or understand our character.
Yes.
And that's hard for me to believe in. It's hard for me to become immersed in that, which is why I only ever romance him with the light side character.
I know. It's disjointed as well. And it's to the point where, because this is one Arcann's romance among others, like I love Vectors, I love Akavi, I love
You
Eric
like Eric?
Jorgen's. Yes,
Mhm.
love Eric Jorgen's romance as well. But Arcann's romance is one of the top ones out there. It's just immensely benefits the character as well, and his growth. It shows his growth. It's outstanding. And to have a character that I've played through the entire, story as a dark side smuggler,
Mhm.
and then if I want to romance Arcann, it doesn't work mentally for me, because Arcann at this point is redeemed and has been,
Mhm.
his goodness is showing through. It just doesn't seem like it fits. Or,
Yeah.
or else conversely, I would feel like I would need to change my character all the way around to a light side person again
Mhm.
to go through with the romance. So in that way, it's not even true to the character either, my character.
And I think it's important that we make it really clear that we're not saying that you can't make a dark side character work with Arcann in a romance, because I think that you can, but only if you play a dark side character who also has the potential for redemption, and that then becomes the bond that character shares with Arcann.
That's a
That
great point.
we've both done terrible things in the past, but we're both looking to become better people. We're both looking to become somebody else, and we are going to go on this journey towards a new life together. I think that works beautifully, actually.
It does. And I do
But
want to add at this point too,
mhm,
the big kahuna thing that I'm hoping, I'm just throwing this out there, see what you think. So
mhm,
along the same lines as it pertains to romance, I would not consider it to be out of the realm of possibility that if you were to be romancing Arcann over a period of time, we're talking all the stuff that's happened on Odessin and the hangar, the initial romance startup scene, everything, all that stuff that's happened over time with the Arcann romance, over time with a character, with a dark side character. What do you think about the fact that Arcann would slowly become influenced by our characters? And what if Arcann could actually fall to the dark side again because of his newfound family, with his relationship with our player character, coupled with his basically the first time he's fallen in love, right?
mhm, mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
in that case, I could totally see him running around with us in the galaxy as a fallen version of himself.
I could too. I absolutely could. And I think that is the other possible headcanon that you can have for Arcann with a dark side character. If your dark side character does not have the potential for redemption, and that is not the bond that they share. For me, the only other thing that then makes sense is exactly what you just said, Bodie, that he actually falls, that you fall together, so to speak. And I can see that relationship being incredibly unhealthy and very
Yes.
tragic, because
Can you imagine anything more sad
because
in
we
that story?
know that what makes Arcann fall is yearning for affection that is not attainable. Or a
Oh man.
twisted relationship, a twisted love, right? I mean that's exactly what made him
Yeah,
fall in the first
unrequited.
place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something that is unrequited, or something that is just twisted into something that is poisonous to him. And he actually does express that in his rejection letter if you start a romance
Oh,
with him
that's the worst
and
thing
then
ever.
cheat on him, which of course I don't think either of us have ever done that, at
I
least.
did it by mistake on a throwaway too, and it was the worst thing in the game. It's soul crushing.
Because he actually says in that letter, he says something along the lines of, why must I always pursue the affection of those who cannot give it?
Yes, that hits so hard.
It does, because that indicates that being betrayed like that, or failed by a player character who romances him, for him, it's a repetition of the trauma. He finds himself, stuck in that same cycle again, looking for love somewhere where he just can't find it. And, I think it's heavily implied in that letter as a result of not being able to get what he wants from this person, finding himself in that downward spiral again, going towards the
Yeah.
dark side.
I completely concur. And I absolutely could see this being a consequence
Mm-hmm.
of our players' actions in the
Mm-hmm.
future going forward. So the consequences would be for So first of all, break it down to the scenarios. Why would somebody keep Arcann and Senya alive in the story?
Oh, I wrote a list.
They're light side. They believe in him. They believe in redemption, etc. Or maybe even dark side. Again, like my dark side smuggler. What can this person bring to my plans for the future? Are they an asset to me? Absolutely.
Yes.
What else?
Well, I wrote down as my number one, I also wrote down the player character is light side, very possibly a Jedi who truly believes in redemption. And that's the reason for keeping him alive. Number two could be the player character is in love with him, perhaps a combination of 1 and 2. I mean, that is a very real reason why somebody might decide to keep him around.
Yeah.
Number 3, as you said, the player character believes that he is an asset and selfishly keeps him around, not for his sake, but for their own sake, because of what they can do for him as a part of the alliance. Number 4, the player character might believe that it is better that he lives to atone. The player character might feel that he does need to be punished for his crimes, but that it's a better punishment that he lives to help rebuild, essentially, rather than simply being sentenced to death.
Right.
And finally, there's the really dark option, which is that the player character decides to keep him around for sadistic reasons, essentially, to demean him, to manipulate him, and to punish him emotionally for what he's put them through. And which is, in my opinion, not a great way to play the story, because to me that it is contrary to everything that a Star Wars story is supposed to be about, and it's also just it's kind of a very shallow edgelord take on this story. I don't know what else to call it than that, but I know that there are people out there who probably do choose to keep him around for that reason, because they like the idea of this character who was so powerful and who did these things to them, now having to follow them around and obey their orders.
Well, so I agree with all those as being real reasons. So it comes down to then what would be the consequences for each group. So if we're talking the consequences, I'm sorry, specifically speaking about dark side characters, the light side story, I think we already have established. I think that's maybe even possibly intended to be the canon story, which is where we progress to now. Like I think the Jedi Knight is supposed to be the canon anyway, because we see that everywhere in all the dev streams and all the videos and stuff. It's the male Jedi Knight playthrough. Anyway,
it's the stock character they always use.
It is
evidence for that.
So speaking exclusively about dark side characters, just generally speaking, that did keep Arcann and Senya alive in that, what are the consequences going to be for your actions post KOTFE KOTET? And for me, that falls into 2 camps. See if you agree with this for dark side characters. So at a certain point, 7-3 and beyond, we have a consequence drop where Arcann and Senya actually come up to you, or somehow, I'm not sure how it's going to go down, but they actually leave the alliance. And it's important to me personally that it be on their volition, that our character is not kicking them out, that they are leaving because of our actions.
I love the idea of there being some sort of line that Arcann and Senya would not be willing to cross, or some kind of treatment from the commander that they would be unwilling to stand for and tolerate. I would love to see that again, because I feel like it would give their characters even more agency and integrity. And even though it would be an immensely tragic story and sad for us, because obviously we want to continue having these characters as a part of our story, I would really like to see that. I think that it would be doing the characters a service. I also feel like the seeds have been planted for something like that to happen. I don't feel like it would come out of nowhere, actually, because if you do choose the cruelest dialogue options whenever you speak to Arcann, if you consistently do that and you choose those sadistic things that you can say to him, especially in the throne room scene, where you can say some really horrible things to him, he actually does react in a way that to me indicates that he could be on his way, that could be what gives him a push towards falling again. Do you remember, Bodie, how he reacts when he steps towards the throne? in that final chapter of KOTET, and he says, I was never fit to rule. And then the player character can say, take one step closer to the throne and I will cut you down where you stand.
I'll kill you. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really messed up.
Do you remember how he responds?
No, I've never said it to him, so I don't know.
I have explored those options and I've escaped out of the conversation because I just wanted to see how he responds. And if you say that to him, he says, but I could fix everything. If I took back the throne, I could fix everything. And then Senya says, that's your father speaking. That's really significant to me. Because that indicates to me that he reacts to being treated that way by grasping for power with a different intention. But as Senya indicates, it would be a slow slide towards the same thing.
I'm hoping it's a slow boil. I mean, hopefully it's a simmer moving up to like a boiling point that's gonna be reached for the two of them. I'm hoping that that's gonna be the case, because the other scenario that I briefly want to talk about, we only have a minute left, is that I can 100% see him falling again, but only if he's with a romance character. I can see there being a lot of drama and a lot of tragic things that could possibly happen, especially as it pertains to Senya reliving the same experience that she had trying to rescue Valen, maybe trying to get Arcann one last time from somebody's persuasive clutches again.
Yes.
Manipulating him and stuff like that. I could see lots of potential for amazing storytelling there. Super sad and tragic though. But that's what I wanted to throw out there for long-term 7-3 and beyond for me. And for you, I think too.
Really interesting discussion. And I really hope to see the devs delve into this.
I agree completely. But yeah.
All right, we are out of time.
Yes. So thanks for joining, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
See you soon. Farewell for now.
This concludes another episode of Platform 6 Cantina, a Star Wars The Old Republic podcast.